Good evening, everyone, and it's so nice to see all of you here with Dr. Cohen and me, myself. We have a very exciting evening tonight. A few quite exciting announcements. But first and foremost, I will let you know what we're going to talk about tonight. And tonight, Dr. Cohen will talk firstly a little bit about the biology and physical components of the viruses and what can we do to protect ourselves and what control do we have in our immediate environment to make some changes and protect ourselves, to protect ourselves from the viruses. Second of all, we're going to talk about how, looking at the past, what happened to human history and Earth history, how can we predict what's going to be happening in the future? And third, but not least important topic will be, Dr. Cohen mentioned last week about parts of the soul. And some of you were very curious to learn more about that. So we will touch upon that at the third part of the lecture. What are the parts of the soul? And Dr. Cohen has a lot of experience and had taught many groups around the world regarding this topic, so we have very limited amount of time, but if any of you are interested in a more expanded version of that topic, we could accommodate maybe that in the future. So you all know what to do. You comment below while Dr. Cohen is talking and I'm relaying questions to him. That creates a more dynamic conversation and we get live feedback from you guys, where we at, and what's your interest level. But tonight, before we start, I want to talk about this genius invention that was invented by Israeli company called Sonovia. And this is an antimicrobial mask that fits very nicely over your face, as you can see. And it has two straps at the back. So this is not just an ordinary mask. This mask is very special because it's been treated with zinc, and copper to be antimicrobial. So that means every time the virus particles or molecules get in contact with the mask, they get killed right away. And this mask is very durable, to my surprise. You can last up to 100 washes. And the price for this mask is a bit pricey, $69, but it's well worth it, to protect yourself and your family from the virus that is spreading around the world. So if you guys interested and you need some more information, please let us know. We have them for sale at our office. It's $69. And if you have any questions, you can always get in touch with us. And as usual, we are open for business, open for your services. As you see, we have all these lovely products, including Dr. Cohen's line to support you on your health and vitality. And enjoy the beautiful evening, and we'll be here for you. And as usual, we're going to finish with Dr. Cohen's special meditation for this group that all of you are waiting for and raving about.
Okay, also with the mask, what works together is the light therapy that a lot of people don't realize scientifically. We are light beings. Every one of our cells in our body that we need to be primed to recognize an intrusion or a stressor on our life has light receptors. So how do we generate more light? I worked with a company, I was the clinical advisor a number of years ago, and we took Russian research from the 1980, which was to inject certain frequencies of light into the blood, and then a engineer figured out by just reading basic science research that there were two places in the body that you could inject light and therefore stimulate oxygen without using a needle. Up until then, the Russians used needles and would inject it through the vein. So the one was under the tongue, which is not practical. You try tying something down to your tongue. The other is through the nasal cavities. And so there's two ways for those that want a scientific background. there's cytochrome P oxygenase that gets stimulated by certain frequencies, and that releases more oxygen that attaches to the cell wall, which is imperative for us to recognize what something that's foreign and capable of making us not well. The other place is into the blood from the directly through the nose, and the body can handle about an hour a day without doing damage. So the light device you use in the morning, that's what I do anyway, one nostril and for 25 minutes, because the maximum is an hour a day in a 24-hour period. So the device was designed to shut off after 25 minutes, and then you use the second nostril at night. And if you have that mask that we discovered I found it listening to the news from abroad about this company, that you'd be really protected by aberrations of components that are creating a high amount of the virus, because it takes a certain amount of the virus to become effective as a pathogen. So by doing that, if it should get through and land on your face, it will die immediately. And if you have the oxygen, so if it should get through the eyes is probably the most likely place, the oxygen will kill the virus also. So that combination, and then you already went through, I won't go through that again unless somebody asks me to, but you have the idea of how the immune system works that was chronicled a number of years ago in the Journal of Cellular Biology, that our immune system is primed we have to educate it. So it's not just pathology and getting a toxic medicine or vaccine or anything like that. It's understanding that we are educators. So learning to be isolated now and learning how interdependent we are with each other, because life could be miserable if you can't leave the house and you're not getting along with each other. Then we need to educate not only our immune system what's a pathogen, we need to educate all the people close to us. And a lot of you have asked me to talk about the journey of the soul. How do we grow souls and how do we become more efficient? Well, part of it was tells us the same way we can look at this epidemic and this pandemic as not something that's going to destroy ourselves, but something that's an amazing opportunity for us to create something that's never been created before, and using the power of interdependence. So if we can work together, and not just work humans to humans, but humans to nature, humans to other species on this planet, and how we realize that each one of us is dependent on something that someone else gives. And the immune system is to allow us to exist through chaos. Because we're all designed to die, and we're all designed to fall apart. And our immune system is to say, not right now, we got something to do. And I know that everybody listening tonight has something that they have to not only learn and share, but also reap the benefits of reaching a level of consciousness that none of us have reached before, but also to share it with others. And so a key thing in immunology, in applied immunology, is the oneness, the unity, the interdependence, and the opportunity. And then to share it. We have to share it. And then we have an opportunity. This is unique because I don't know about you guys, but I haven't had this much free time probably since I was a little kid. You know, I always was doing things, always going places, always traveling, and always doing this. This is the first time I'm alone, and it's given me an opportunity to really reflect within, and at this stage of my life, what is going to be most valuable for me to share with others. So, history of viruses. 52% of our DNA that defines us, our identity, comes from viruses. You go swimming in the ocean, remember our blood is part of the ocean. It comes from the ocean. Every drop has 10 million viruses. We provide the proteins that the virus needs to live. They attach to us. They don't want to kill us. They want to live off us. In the old days, before modern technology and world travel and airplanes and gigantic cruise ships, every 85 miles, we had a different community of microbes. Most parts of the world that we reached had never experienced a human being. Yet there was a co-relationship between the microbes and the other species that lived in those areas. And they learned how to be interdependent on each other and not cause a die-off of either species. Then human beings got hungry and started thinking that all life is something to eat and started capturing species that were dependent on nature, and we started eating them or using them for labor. And now we're suffering the remnants.
So can I ask you a question, because it's a very interesting premise that you're saying that at some point we're starting using the nature to our own benefit, and therefore we somehow fallen off the right path to our evolution?
Yeah, we've changed evolution. We're now the activity of humans on the planet is 400% stronger than evolution, where it wasn't that long ago where evolution was dominated. So we're seeing changes in not only the environment. I mean, 70 some odd percent of the wildlife no longer lives on the planet. We've eliminated them since 1970. That's not a lot of time. It's 50 years. What took billions of years, we got rid of in 50 years. You go swimming up in the mountains. I mean, when I was hiking up in Tibet, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be able to jump into pure mountain. And this is so remote, you have no idea. Even just getting there I thought was a miracle yet. And then I was told, no, you can't bathe in there, and you can't drink the water. This is high up in the Himalayas. And you have to bring in your own water, and you can't use it. Up in the Himalayas, there was, in the water, there were birth control pills. There were man-made poisons. So imagine to go in the most remote areas of the world where the largest portion of human species lived, you can't drink the water and you can't pick the food. It's all polluted. You can't go into the water.
So given the trends that we've done so far in the last 50 years at least, what do you see happening, from now forward as we move into, further into the century and advancing more technology?
We have a choice. We can learn to love each other in a way we forgot. Nurture. The most telling thing I learned back in the Gulf War days with Saddam Hussein, that in Iraq, that he was never held or touched. We are designed to be nurtured. Every one of us. If you're not nurtured every day, you regress.
What does that mean? Can you talk a bit more? What does that mean to be loved and nurtured? What does it look like?
It's very simple. Non-sexual touch.
So human contact,
Oxytocin.
shaking hands, hugging,
Yeah, oxytocin.
kissing.
Produces oxytocin. Gently getting the belly rubbed. I recommend 9 circles and reverse circles. That dramatically produces oxytocin. That's the hormone that makes you feel part of everything and responsible for everything, and that you care. That's the hormone that you have when you observe somebody in pain and you want to cry. That's the one that teaches us compassion. And that compassion is not feeling sorry for the other person. Compassion is wanting to correct your own flaws so you can be an example to others and guide them how to handle their own wounds. That's true compassion. And without compassion, we end up with a broken heart.
But what about people who live by themselves, or let's say they're not in the, intimate relationship? How do you get that belly rub?
Do it yourself.
You can do it yourself. That's a good one. Everybody remember, you can do it. So
No,
it
you
works
can. It does.
if you
No,
touch
the
yourself,
belly.
belly. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you do daily belly rubs.
The scientist that discovered this, she's from Scandinavia. She learned this by experimenting on herself. She had 4 pregnancies, and then she measured the blood chemistry to see what the effect was. So we know that a female that's pregnant, that gets nurtured. There's nothing wrong with sex. Sex is a wonderful experience of getting close to another person and getting pleasure from another person. But this is not sex. This is nurturing. And without nurturing, we have a compromised immune system. So if you look around, who's suffering the most from this virus are people that had previous traumas that did horrible physiological changes to their bodies. Traumatized people are the most vulnerable person. And where does this virus prey on? The ACE, the angiotensin receptors, that are in every single organ of the body, including the heart. That's why you have heart disease, kidney, the gut, and of course the lungs. And
when you say trauma, do you mean emotional trauma, or do you mean physical trauma? What kind of trauma produces that effect?
all trauma. What is all trauma? All trauma alters your chemistry.
So any kind of trauma. So if we as human species, what you're saying, we've done a lot of damage to our environment, right, in the last 50 years, which we're not sure if it's reversible. We need to nurture and love ourselves to change. How do you see that change happening in today's society, the way we already are? and what's going to happen if we don't make those changes. What else can we do to, support our environment, ourselves in this process?
By supporting ourselves. Just stop for a moment and think of what world do you want for yourself and the next generations. Is this the world you want to leave behind? This is a paradise. A lot of people, when they study spirituality, don't realize what the word paradise means. That within all the truths of nature, when you experience it correctly, you reach paradise. So by interpreting things as something evolving that you're a part of, and putting the effort into the right way, and then being okay, just being, we're here in Menlo Park, we're 25 minutes away from the ocean, and the ocean is in our blood. So when we sit quietly by the ocean, we're purifying our own blood. I had somebody the other day asked me, what's the best probiotic? And probiotics, great. But if you take commercial probiotics and you've ran out of probiotics for 24 hours, you have to start all over again. But if you get your probiotics from nature, from standing barefoot in the sand and bringing in the ocean breeze, you're creating a flood of microbial world that is opening all kinds of possibilities. Remember, all viruses, I know everybody's concerned with COVID-19, but a virus comes by attaching itself mostly to a bacteria. Sometimes it attaches itself to our cells.
And this is a very good point that you're making. You talked to me about, and I wanted to talk to patients about that exposure to virus doesn't make that you're going to get the disease, the COVID-19.
First of all, you have to COVID-19. You have to get exposed to a couple of viruses, or 1,000 viruses, or 5,000 viruses. You're not going to get sick unless you're already on your deathbed. But if you have to get a high number, has to get through. So that's why I'm saying we have to educate our immune system, because we're going through a period of microbial change. And at the same time, we're learning how important the microbes are. That we have microbes in our body that we're dependent on. We have viruses, but we also have fungi. And certainly we have trillions of bacteria that we're dependent on. In most cases, we work really well with each other. And we create lives that are, look what we've created here in Silicon Valley. How much innovation. Look all the medical changes that we've made. Look at the discoveries people made. When I look back and when I started my career, I'm amazed at just the scientific changes, the things I can objectify and look at in numbers and tell you what's going on. When it was before, it was basically a basic knowledge and intuition. Now we can use technology to pinpoint things. So it's critical that we use this time to see what kind of life do we want to live within, and what kind of opportunity this is. Is this going to bring us closer to the people we love? Is this going to help heal the planet? Do we need to eat phony food that makes us sick? Fake food? That you need a PhD in biochemistry to know what the heck they put into it and how it works, and have no idea how it interacts with our own microbiome? And the components that make us, they become addicts also. Literally, that's Harvard. That's not me. Harvard research. We've created microbial addicts. And they crave food, what they call, well, people call food, but human uh, mimicking of food. And you think, oh, I need that. Oh, what I wouldn't do to have a piece of fake chocolate cake. Real chocolate is actually good for you.
A burger or something.
Well, something that's not even a burger. That's, who the heck knows what? They don't even know what they put in it. Yeah. I've talked about my Uncle Robert, who was a big, I was so fortunate to have him as a child. He was head of the local mailmen unions, and he was what we call the last of the roaring individualists. So when he was born with one man-made chemical in his body. So that's in my lifetime. I mean, not that when he was born way before my lifetime, but he was born one, and that was lead. Because the lead from the Industrial Revolution was stored in the bones, and the bones release key nutrients, as they do today, and in those, what the bone releasing from the mother, so the mother carrying the lead, that was in my Uncle Robert. But that was it. Today, an average baby is born with close to 300 man-made chemicals, and there is zero science on how they interact or what they do. The only time there is something that the industry itself has to pay for is research if something is causing objective disease.
So it's a very good point that you're making, that, we are those carriers, you call sometimes, of bacteria and viruses, and we are alive, and they help us to survive and keep us alive. And one interesting point that I want to make, that there is good news about the virus. And we, listened to the podcast where it was mentioned that in many cases, you cannot avoid a lot of diseases like heart diseases and some digestive diseases, could be DNA, could be exposure. Right. But virus, actually, it's very easy to protect yourself from, because if you don't come into the contact with a virus, you're not going to get a virus. You're not going to get a virus thinking about the virus. You're not going to get a virus by eating the wrong food, or you can only get the virus if you're not social distancing yourself, you're not keeping the proper hygiene, you're not covering your face, and you're not taking care of your body as, per Dr. Cohen's protocol. So there's actually, it changed my way how I think about the virus. It removed that fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to get the virus. And it made me realize I will only get the virus if I will not be careful. And even if I get the virus, if I do the steps to prepare my body for that, I'll be okay.
Yeah, only 3% of the people who get the virus become seriously sick. So does that mean, like a lot of these people I hear in the internet and doctors selling all kinds of things and telling you this is all fake? It's not fake. We have a virus right now that it's unknown. Anybody tells you it's known hasn't talked to the scientists. It's unknown. We don't know. So how do we protect ourselves? We have to do the steps. Now, our immune system is damaged by isolation. we build our immune system by what we're exposed to. So I don't recommend taking unnecessary chances, but I do recommend that we do not expose ourselves unnecessarily until things go through a different cycle. And typically with these type of microbial epidemics, it takes 3 years historically, all them, and they come in different forms. This one is one we don't have a history. I listened to the top Chinese immunologist yesterday, I think it was, and he said for sure, and he's well respected, he's affiliated with Harvard, but he's respected by the Chinese government. He said it came from animals. We went into the animal world where there weren't any humans, and they became a delicacy, and they carry viruses that we don't have any history with. And that's what happened. The same thing we're doing here, how we're raising animals to eat in death camps, how they're tortured. There was a great Tibetan teacher that I had the good fortune in my life, I had a lot of good fortune, was Rinpoche Rinpoche. He was arrested when the Chinese invaded Tibet, and he was held in a concentration camp for 27 years. And one of the ways they tortured him was they put him in a cage where he couldn't stand up or he couldn't lie down for over 4 months because he was having difficulty remembering the teachings of Mao. And I learned this 7-point mind training with him. And I practice it every day. And maybe this is the reason why a lot of women like me, is because 4 of the 7 steps have to do with the mother, with the female energy. Without the female, we don't survive. And what is the female energy? Self-sacrifice. I don't know too many men that can put themselves through what females do to have a new birth and then to nurture their child. But that's the same way the universe came about. The mystical reason why the universe came about is there's no English word, so I'll try my best. It's Tzimtzum, which means to become larger but becoming smaller. And it's hard to translate. So that brought about the Big Bang.
Does that speak to the law of physics that whatever extracts, it contracts? That we were, a tiny rock, and then we exploded, and then we're going to contract at some point again.
But what is that tiny? They called it the nikuda, the point. What is that point? It's a virus. It's potential. We wouldn't have come about as a species with all this potential unless we emerged from something that was a tiny dot originally. But it had so much possibility and such opportunity that it caused it to explode.
It's interesting that you talk about potential, because when you talk about the purpose, and in previous lectures we covered a lot about purpose and life's purpose, and it's all about self-expression and potential in that expression. And when you think about the virus, and that virus's purpose is also the potential, you feel more connected to that virus, not as an enemy, but as a somebody or something rather, that is trying to achieve the same goal as we are trying to achieve as conscious humans.
Yeah, and that was the survival of the sickest. Everything alive wants to create an environment that it can pass on its genes.
Which brings us to another question, a very good question from Roseanne. Thank you, Roseanne. that she's asking, can viruses change our DNA?
Viruses are our DNA. They're a big part of our DNA. Yes, we spliced them together and created a future to be human.
Okay, so the answer is yes.
It is. Virus is not our enemy. It's the unknown and the bad choices we make in trying to handle the unknown. For example, and I won't mention any people in the news, but there's somebody in the news taking an anti-malarial drug thinking that's going to protect them from the virus. What are you doing with that drug? You're challenging the very existence of the virus. Instead of creating an environment that you can handle the virus. They've always been with us. Our microbiome is our identity that we need to work. Big part of it is viral. In my office, we use a provirus and a probiotic formula from Eastern Europe to treat intractable urinary infections. And for some people, that changes their life. Those are proviruses.
So what is the best way to think about the virus in you? You don't want to think of them as your friends and invite them over, for a dinner party, but you don't want to think of them as enemies, because then it creates that unnecessary fear and, some sort of very heavy judgment. How would you suggest to think about that?
It's a real fear, because people that suffer from it really suffer. It's not an easy place to go. You need to self-examine, and are you nurtured enough? And are you focused enough? Is your own immune system educated enough? And I'm starting to use that word educated because that's exactly what we're doing. Nutrients are tools of education. Our gut lining, which is one cell thick, is where the education takes place. Our biome, what do we do? Well, okay. People ask me, how do I take care of my biome? How do I feed it? Well, one of the key words is the same way we live in society is diversity. You have to have at least 48 different nutrients per day to keep up with the body's need for repair. And don't panic, that's not 48 different foods. A carrot could have 42 different nutrients. But eating real food and relating to food, and we know from longevity studies that people live longer by laughing and telling funny stories while eating fresh, nutrient-dense foods, preferably picked the same day.
Yeah, I have one more question, which is a practical question. Marion is asking, she doesn't live near the ocean. Is there any substitute?
Our backyard.
Nature, right?
Our backyard. Barefoot in her backyard. You have enough in 15 years there to learn each leaf.
So
I attended a lecture back in many years ago in Fort Mason. There's an organization there, and there was a guy. Originally, he was somebody that went to the Amazon to convert ancient tribes to Christianity, and he told his story. He was a scholar, so he was there 8 years, and he was talking about he went there with the attitude that he knew the truth and they didn't. So he said one of the things he told them about Jesus. And then he said, I started walking with them through nature. There was one word in English to describe a certain plant. They had 80 different words to describe the same plant. They knew everything about the plant, but they didn't know anything about Jesus. So one of the last of the ancient tribes asked him, he said, so you knew Jesus? And he says, no, I read it in a book. And showed him what a book was. He said, you talked to Jesus? And he said, no, not really. And he said, so you don't really know Jesus? You've never even met him. And he said, and he realized then that we use all these great teachers and inspirations. They're really signposts. They don't take us anywhere. They just let us know we're on our way. And it's what's the personal experience you have with nature. So if you go in your backyard and you look at the different leaves and you meditate, you're getting a higher education because every one of those leaves is different and has different potencies.
So Marion, here you go. You can find your education for your immune system wherever you go, whether it's nature, whether it's prayer, whether it's water. It doesn't have to be one thing. But let's switch gears a little bit here. And we said that we're going to talk a little bit about the parts of the soul.
Okay, so this is ancient stuff. And it has to do with virology also. Because the same principles of studying this soul, and in Jewish mysticism, the soul is very, very important. So in mystical Judaism, this is not mainstream Judaism, this is the esoteric Judaism that for generations got buried. So you didn't find this by going to a regular synagogue or following orthodoxy. So the first part of the soul that was originally in the mysticism was taught there were three parts of the soul. The first one is the nephesh. So that's the energy that generates life. And that only exists in your lifetime. In other words, you have to have a body and a lifetime to experience that. The second part was taught was ruach, which also is the same word they use for wind. And that's the life perpetuating force, using Tibetan language translation, but it's also the force that connects the nephesh to the part of your soul, which is best translation would be psycho-emotional. That's also with everything that you did in your life, past life, all the spiritual consequences and progress is stored. That's where rebirth or karma, that's where it's stored. Then there's the neshama. Now this is probably the hardest concept to people to get because that's the soul that never changes, always been there. And yet there's a very perfect concept that goes along with it. It's growing the soul, yet the soul never changes. In physics, that's the vacuum. That's where the void comes in. And the most important concept for our healing, because all of us need to heal through this episode we're going through, that's where the vacated space comes. That's where you give up what's no longer necessary. That's where all forgiveness comes in. But the neshama stays the same. It never goes away. Well, the ruach does and doesn't. Then there was a great master, and it's now revived as a city up north near the Lebanese border in Israel, that Sfat, which became a center for art and spirituality, where they taught Jewish mysticism, and there's now lots of schools and other things to teach that. So up there, back in the 1600s, there was a great master named the Ari, or the lion. And a lot of the stuff that, if you read books, there's a lot of physicists that talked about all the structure of existence. They got a lot of their material originally from the Ari in the 1600s. So he said that 3 is not enough. The soul has 5 components. So this wasn't traditional. So if you read ancient homeopathy, if you read ancient Tibetan medicine, if you read Jewish healing of Kabbalistic alchemy, they all talk about the life force, the life-sustaining force. Everyone is using a slightly different language, but they're talking about the same thing.
Would that be equivalent to what in some religions is called God?
No.
So life-sustaining force is something different.
The life-sustaining force is one that goes step-down process from the neshama, from the permanent soul. It steps down through what we would call the mind, and ends up in the physical realm. And so the word that he used to say that energy was chashmal, which was interesting because we didn't physically learn about electricity until only a few centuries ago. And chashmal is electricity. And then he said there was a 5th source, which is totally relevant to what everyone here listening is dealing with today. And he called that the Yichud, which is the best translation I can come up with is the unifying force, the oneness. So all disease, all conflict, all struggles, or what the Tibetans call ignorance, which means forgetting what's the true nature of phenomena, which is the origin of pathology in Tibetan teachings. All that comes from a break in that oneness. So all this process of transforming, which could take 3 years, a dangerous process into us experiencing not only birth, but what we need is resilience, the ability to withstand something that's dangerous and life-altering, yet turning it into something that is exquisitely beautiful. And being out in nature and understanding, we literally live in a garden. And in all the teachings, Tibetan and the Hebrew teachings, they all said the same thing. Every one that I ever came through was every pathology has a solution in nature. And when we made viral defense, we took the five most potent solutions out of nature from all over the world, and we mixed them together, found out how they mix together. Now it's an interesting process, and we want to use all these medicines as a way of transforming ourselves into something elegant, exquisitely beautiful, and a heart that generates the energy of unity, just like the Ari. And there was an Arab village up there, not far from spot where the Ari was, where his grave is, in the middle of an Arab village. And young women would go to his grave to pray for a husband. And I was not up there praying for a husband or a wife. I was actually up there, something to do with something cultural. And I was talking to the people of the village, and I watched it. It was like a vacuum of energy pulling people towards his grave. It was like, it was really like a vortex, a spinning vortex, and it existed. And I saw so many women that were up there when I was there. It was me and all these women, and the women were crying and lighting candles, and the power of the feminine.
So, given what you shared today with us, the parts of the soul, the nefesh, and I apologize if I don't pronounce them correctly, ruah and nishama.
You did a beautiful job.
Ari and his grave after his death, which part of the soul is still there?
Ruach.
That is generating such an attraction.
Ruach.
So when people talk about reincarnation, coming back, ruah is something that comes back in every lifetime. But nefesh is, do we leave it behind?
Yes.
So whatever struggles you've had in your life, whatever life you had, you can start all over.
You move on with your nefesh. That's the time to move on, not to hold on to something that's not better. We hold on to the wrong things. I remember when I was 18 years old, and I was in a remote area in Turkey, and I was with this Italian guy, Francisco Galino, and he's grabbing my arm. I was like hypnotized. It was a gypsy girl, and with her family, and I couldn't keep my eyes off her eyes. It was like in a vortex. And he kept saying, don't look, they'll kill you. He was telling me with his Italian accent. When I knew him, he was 21 years old and he spoke 23 languages. And I traveled with him. I knew he can speak them. And so it's the same thing. We get memory in our eyes. We hold the power to recreate not only our world, but that's, in a sense, that's how more multiverses take place. They get born. And we didn't have time to go into Ripper Rinpoche's from Atisha, an Indian genius who created the 7-point mind training. And in the 7-point mind training, the Tibetans came up. They repeat in a different way the aspects of the souls, but in Tibetan Buddhism, there is no soul.
And actually, it could be a very interesting topic for one of our lectures as we continue our lectures. And we do plan to continue, by the way, just a short announcement that next weekend is a Memorial Day weekend. We will not be hosting the lecture that night. So we are sorry about that, but we'll give you a little break, not that long. And we're planning to come back in June and continue with the series. And I thought tonight that 7 steps training that you mentioned before could be a beautiful segue for us to go into after today's lecture, and we'll see if any of you have any other questions, because these three parts of the soul, I feel like we could spend a day talking about it and we still get only the glimpse of it, because it's
Well, I did it in 8 days. The parts
such
of
a
the
deep
soul
concept, and
in nature.
it's a lot to wrap your head around. And you know, I'm thinking if any of you are interested, you know, we would love to do the interactive Zoom virtual sort of seminar. If any of you are interested, please email us at centerforhealing@outlook.com and let us know. We would set up in one of the weekends, maybe 3 or 4 hour interactive practical session where you would go into your parts of the soul with some probably practical exercises, and just dive deeper into such a beautiful topic that Dr. Cohen has so much knowledge, deep knowledge and experience in. So again, if any of you are interested, you know, we would love to explore that deeper.
Let me also say that we have the COVID-19, which is the pathological version of the virus. I think it's interesting because the higher realm in the tree of life structure, where the 5 elements of the soul come in, is Keter, which means crown. So we have a crown virus that was sent here by the deepest creative forces to teach us that there's a journey that can be taking place, that we can enter, and it's a journey that has to go through the feminine. And that starts with the heart. The journey back to self, which is through self-sacrifices. So why are we locked up within ourselves when there's some force beyond ourselves trying to teach us how to go through the heart and back to our true self, our home?
What I like about your teachings, Dr. Cohen, that you always find something positive and spiritual and very meaningful to say, even about something can be fear generating and can be quite difficult to understand and accept in these circumstances. But we're not saying that you should not protect yourself and not wear this mask, though. Masks are necessary to protect from the physical environment. But at the same time, you need to know that this is something that is deeper and greater than just us, and it's part of the oneness, as Dr. Cohen told us today about, and just trust but protect. I think that's really the message to take home for the listeners tonight.
Well, you have discernment. If you have a purpose, and your purpose is to fulfill your purpose, that's a great benefit to yourself and for those that you love, you're going to be careful. And don't read it, those crazy stuff on the internet. I sometimes check them out, and I don't get it. There's some people that really understand science that are creating a false narrative of conspiracy and government and scientists. I mean, I've known a lot of scientists, as you know, I was friends with a lot of scientists. I've never met one that was even remotely capable of doing conspiracy. Most times people are doing their work because they want to contribute. And they live by an understanding that knowledge, but real knowledge. And remember, one of the most profound teachings I ever got from my Tibetan journeys was that all pathology begins with ignorance. That if you have a pathology, you're ignorant. And think about it, your body starts responding as if you're still sick, as if you're still sick, that you still have. In most cases, the microbe is gone, but your mental state has got so imprinted that you experience the world that you created yourself, and the microbial world is trying to cleanse us from it. So we want to be aware, we want to be discerning and protective. Think about who you can protect. Look at animals. They love you. They'll give their life to protect you.
On that note, we're gonna be closing tonight's session into our meditation.
Right.
And those who want to stay around, I know we went a bit over time tonight, but those who can stick around for meditation, please do.
Any last minute questions before we?
No last minute questions. But
Was that clear?
I think people just, it's a lot to think about. And I posted on the Facebook, and those who interested in Dr. Cohen's seminar workshop, I think it's going to be 3 to 4 hours on Zoom. If you are interested, we would love to do it for you guys. Please email it to us. We will try to think of some dates, probably in June, July. And that would be a great group of people to go deeper and explore your spiritual path. So let us know about that. And I just want to remind about the masks that they are available at the office for $69. It's a bit more expensive mask. I paid $35 for a very simple cloth mask, nothing special, on Amazon. So $69 is a good investment if you know that you can wash it 100 times. If you wash it twice a month, it can last you a long, long time. And if you take care of it nicely, and it's a very high quality mask, I would say, I'm very impressed with the materials, and everything that they use is really of high quality. So if you guys want, let us know. And as usual, Viral Defense is here. We are fully stocked, and we are fully stocked with all other supplements that you guys need. And Dr. Cohen is available to your virtual sessions. We are fully set up with Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, you name it. Whatever medium you want to use, we are ready for it. We will update you about reopening our office. We started following the CDC guidelines about reopening and preparing our office to do it safely with all the precautions that are regulated by the federal and local state governments. So we just want you to feel safe to come back to our sanctuary, to our healing center, and continue our work together for a better future and healthier selves. Dr. Cohen, meditation.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So I want you to, this is a visualization meditation. So you can close your eyes. Make yourself comfortable. And we're going to go through the journey of the souls. So all reality has to go through a step-down process. It goes from pure light or clear light through your crown. And our whole body is a perfectly designed instrument for transformation. We have the capabilities of swallowing that virus and turning it into pure light. We're literally capable of doing that. We have enough innovation, and have a whole history of thousands of years of exploration into the soul to protect ourselves from whatever is not healthy or not essential for our spiritual growth. So that for a moment, Just visualize yourself as a part of your own neshama, and all these difficulties, all these frustrations, all the grief and loss, everything that's touched all of us is just fertilizer for the soul. And the neshama has always been there before there was a creation. It always will be there. It's permanent, and it's there to germinate the energy so we have a comfortable, full life that expresses our uniqueness. It's just to remind you that you already have overcome impossible odds to reach this point of opportunity. Take a few moments and I'll join you shortly. Now take a couple of moments and without a lot of stress, find things to make vacated space by letting go of what is no longer needed, that just became unnecessary weight, whether it's relationships, whether it's losses, or moments when you weren't understood or you weren't nurtured or loved, challenged. So let it go into the realms of emptiness. Take a few moments, I'll join you shortly. Now experience life as a garden where you're growing the soul. And that's the Ruach. Here it's the opposite of what we did earlier. Here you can decide what you want to keep. What have you learned that you want to stay with you no matter where you journey? That's the Ruach. That's the life force. Choose carefully, because if you don't really need it, it becomes a burden. Choose what you need to keep. A journey through the heart. That's where Ruach is. That's your connections. Do you still need those connections? Or are they just extra weight? Each where you can heal, keep in mind you have to forgive yourself. There's no failure, there's just opportunity. Take a few moments, I'll join you shortly. Now take a deep breath and visualize yourself descending through your emotions into the physical. When we're in the physical, everything speeds up. We never quite feel like we have enough time. But we wouldn't have a physical unless we had heaviness. Remember, heaviness comes from, in physics, how fast something is moving and contracting. Now be careful here. It's very seductive. It's where the beauty becomes not only elegant and through beautiful emotion, it's also seductive. If you're not careful, you'll think it's permanent. It's not permanent. Death doesn't allow it to be permanent. Remember, what's permanent is our higher soul. And that's the one that all our choices are fertilizing. So we can experience reflections that are much more distant than this physical universe. Careful now. Notice how you're getting pulled in. Remember, it's an experience for your own growth. It's not something you own and keep. It's something that dissipates, but we need to keep the lessons. The lessons are critical. Now we're going to the level of Chashmal. We're doing the Ari's expanded teachings. This is a life force that comes from our physical choices. The one that unifies us with the reality of planting something and allowing it to grow. That's the connection between the three souls, is the Kashmal. Without that electrical current, life couldn't exist. Allow it run through your body, up through your brain, and skull. And notice it connects endlessly with pure light. Remember, there's so much of that. There's so much that one universe can contain it all. There's so much forms of life and so many levels. So in a sense, we are soul farmers. We plant the seed of life and see if it grows through nurturing. And now the one that we need through these times, the yichud, the unity, the oneness. All of these are reflections, indentations, shapes. All of them subject to life forces. All of them trying to create a new form from the source of life. And all that force ties all of us together. We are spiritual beings having a profound lesson at this moment. Take a few moments. Feel the breath of life. Feel the 5 components of the soul, keeping the exact same soul, but allowing it to be much more potent. And a tiny virus is not capable of taking that away from us, ever, under any circumstances. If we use our energy, our love, our self-sacrifice, we will go on and we'll experience light. Remember, there's light receptors in every cell of our body. And the life force, by the way, is oxygen. Feel yourselves being blessed and initiated into your true purpose. Oneness, yichud. Take a deep breath. 7, 6, 5. Notice how light you are and how you've been freed from all these burdens. And when you go about tomorrow, notice how you're affecting others. 3, 2, 1. Open your eyes, take a deep breath, and welcome back. Thank you. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.